This video is going to cover the use of Auto-GPT to summarize a patent that we had submitted and had granted several years ago. The purpose of the patent is to demonstrate how an artificial neural network using genetic algorithms and machine vision can be used to track the range of motion of somebody recovering from an injury or surgery. Specifically, it's a virtual goniometer. A goniometer is a physical device that's used by clinicians to measure somebody's range of motion, their knees, their shoulders, their elbows, some other joint that they need to determine its maximum range of motion after these injuries or surgery. The purpose of this is to just demonstrate the utility of using AutoGPT to translate something that's already in existence, in that it can read the patent, interpret the patent, identify key topics, and appropriately summarize it. The patent did translate into an actual application. So using that patent as a basis, we wrote an app called Angles Alpha that was able to consume the elements of the patent using a neural network, genetic algorithms, machine vision. Everything in the patent is in the app in terms of how the app operates. So you can see here some examples of the app in use, just to get a sense of what the final outcome was, as then we go through the application of AutoGPT in interpreting that patent. All right, the patent was created in 2018 in March. The idea here, as I said previously, was to be able to track a person and replace a physical goniometer with a virtual goniometer that we would use to be able to scan a person in a scene. The purpose of the tool could be used for clinicians to be able to collect that data and then feed it into a system without having to manually measure the person and then enter it into a computer. The patent imagery is broken down to the flow chart of the patent, and it's a few pages of some flow. It's fairly intricate, using an artificial neural network, genetic algorithms, decomposition of an image into substance to be fed into a neural network, and then just some graphics overlaying how the geometry is calculated, and then some just visuals for the purpose of the patent itself and how it's identifying joint alignment. All right, how does this translate into AutoGPT? So to do that, you could just send this AutoGPT a series of direct commands, or what I'd like to do is give it a guiding file. So it's a document that outlines the key requirements for the project. In this, you can identify any information you want, login accounts for it to use, expectations, technical specifications. In this particular case, I'm showing the section of the requirements. So by identifying this, the AutoGPT will consume this file, and then it will follow these directions, attempting to satisfy the list of requirements. It can be as sophisticated as you want. You still need to provide real-time guidance to make sure it stays on track. But this document is helpful for both AutoGPT and for myself to make sure I know what I want it to do, because AutoGPT tends to have, and ChatGPT tends to have the problem of drifting away from the target. So one of the requirements I have is to continue to review this document so that it will come back and reread it to reset it back on track. In the next section, I'm going to identify its final product. The patent web page summary, as you can see on the screen, it identified the patent details, the patent summary, calculations, equations, images, authors and relevant dates, application, and related patents. This took several days over the course of small segments of an hour, half hour. I tried not to let the system run autonomously because I found when it does, it sort of completes the project prematurely, thinking it's done, or it veers off and gets stuck doing something it shouldn't. So I would occasionally remind it to read the document, but it would do that on its own. Ultimately, though, I was able to get it to create this page guiding it. I never edited in HTML, CSS, or any code directly. I simply instructed it on what I wanted to see in terms of reorganizing the categories or color formatting. And in that document, I did ask it to use Tesla's AI web page as inspiration. So it actually would go consume the web page and use some of that as recommendation on how to format this page to a degree. This is an example of how I can edit the page. I've asked it to indicate somewhere on the page that it was generated by Auto-GPT. So you'll send the command, in this case, directly to the command line in Auto-GPT. It thinks for a while, and so in the cases where it's thinking, I've sped it up so that it will run faster because it can sometimes take a while. So in this case, it analyzed the document and then is going to provide guidance and write the changes to it once I authorize it. So you can see I refreshed the page and it did add Auto-GPT as the created by or generated by. However, it destroyed the formatting of the page. So this is a bit of a challenge with Auto-GPT is it will do what you ask, but sometimes there's unintended consequences such as destroying the work it's done. And then you have to work with it to go back to it, or sometimes just recover from a backup, depending on how catastrophic the change was. There are definitely some deficiencies. It can achieve your goals, but it operates as a very linear, direct, concrete assistant. Without going into the details, real quick, you can see I started to ask it to restore the CSS file, thinking that the CSS file was damaged, when in fact it simply broke the link to the CSS file when it had added the update to the footer. This is one of those issues where what it does is not always obvious as to why it would do it, but it did it. So I did attempt to restore the CSS. It determined the CSS didn't need to be modified. So then I end up asking it to simply re-reference the CSS file. And when I did that, it restored the page back to the previous formatting with the updated footer. All right, as you can see, even though it did correct the format mostly, it did fail on the header. Now it just says patent web page with no banner on it. So I had attempted a couple fixes, which it didn't seem to fully understand. So I've jumped ahead here. It's just like 5-10 minutes worth of talking with Auto-GPT, but I've jumped ahead here where I asked the right request was to update the visual of it and to give it an updated title, which in this case I was calling it virtual goniometer. The idea was to update the web page on my command. Sometimes it does it as I expect, other times I don't, or sometimes it doesn't. This is definitely a non-trivial process. It's not as simple like in a movie where you just ask the computer to do something and it does it. In this case, sometimes it can do nothing, something clever, or undo its previous work. So it ended up requesting to read the document again, which it always does, which is good. It reads the current state of the document to edit it. In this case, it consumed it. And then on processing it, it makes a determination on what it needs to do. In this case, it was actually pretty successful asking what I wanted. It ended up updating the title to virtual goniometer. And you'll see here when the page is refreshed, it updated the title. All right, the struggle continued. It did update the title, but it did not preserve the formatting. So I then asked it to update the banner at the top to mimic the bottom. It was interesting. The outcome of this was unexpected. In the end, it looked nice, but it wasn't what I expected. Skipping over a few iterations of questions in terms of page optimization, ultimately it ended up generating a nice looking page by mimicking the footer, although it altered the footer as well in the process, which is fine. The final outcome I am happy with. The key lesson here is that you have to be very explicit about what you ask for. And Auto-GPT, just like ChatGPT and all these generative tools, are basically just consuming what humans have made and synthesizing into something approaching what we need. It still has a lot of work from just in general usage, but it is a usable tool. Someone who has no technical skills could theoretically use this to create web page programs, fairly sophisticated projects, if they know how to use at least Auto-GPT and even ChatGPT, because it will guide you through what you need to do. Yeah, please let me know if you have any specific topics or items that you'd like me to highlight. I could even do a demo project if somebody has a request to see if it's capable of doing what they would like. If you do like what I'm producing, please subscribe, like, do whatever is helpful to me, and then that'll help me be able to generate more content for this. Thank you.